We're going to talk this morning a little bit about Yosef and probably maybe the outstanding quality of Yosef. You know, the Yosef story is actually one of my, I think, well, I don't know mine, but I think everybody is so intrigued by the story. It's because, you know, it really has everything in it. You know, it's and most importantly, it's really about misunderstanding somebody and not seeing his greatness. And, you know, then ultimately recognizing their error. And, you know, and just there's such emotion and it's a drama in many ways. You know, what is you know, are they going to recognize Yosef? Yosef recognizes them. He seems to want to test them. He wants to challenge them, so to speak, to see if they've done tshuva over having sold them into slavery. There's so much in it. But what I want to look at this morning, you know, a little bit of time we have, is kind of just one aspect of Yosef. And Yosef is described in a very unique way. He's described as possessing the midah of chen, the aspect of chen. And I'd like to talk a little what that means about chen, what that's all about, and why that's very specific to Yosef. You know, in Yosef, the midah of chen, you know, sometimes we translate it as like in modern Hebrew, matza chen be'enai, it finds favor in my eyes, or sometimes it's translated as charm or grace, perhaps. The Greeks, when they translated the word chen and they put it from the Greek to the Hebrew, they translated it as charisma, charismos, which is charisma in English. And it's the Greeks, that was the best word they could come up with, you know, when they think about chen, a type of, you know, charisma that overtakes a person. And you know, what is charisma? If you think about it in English, charisma in English really is the idea that there's something noticeable about the person. People, you know, just like are astounded by that person. The difference is, you know, the charisma that the Greeks were talking about, and maybe that, you know, Western society speaks about, it seems to be like an inborn, like an innate charisma. This person has charisma, you know, he just has it, so to speak, as if, you know, it's like either you got it or you don't have it. From a Jewish perspective, we understand that it's something much more than that. That chen, from the perspective really of the Torah, is probably, you know, the most beautiful quality a person can possess. And we're going to see what it really means, or really is something which you acquire. You can acquire this type of chen. And we'll discuss a little bit how we acquired it. And how Yosef achieved this, and what made Yosef so unique and so special. So the perspective is really like this. Perspective of chen from a Torah perspective is something which a person achieves when they reach way above themselves and they bring something down. In other words, when a person breaks out of this world, so to speak, and strives for a higher vision, a higher level vision of what's possible, and then they bring it all the way down into the depths of their lives and the darkness, so to speak, of this world, there's something about them which begins to shine. You know, let's use that word, shine. And Yosef seemed to possess that. And that's what the Gemara tells us, by the way. It tells us something very interesting about this quality of chen. It says that if somebody learns Torah, to read you from the Gemara says that when a person studies Torah, so it says the Torah is this ayelis ohavim v'yalis chen. It says the Torah, the study of Torah, is like ayelis ohavim, like a beloved, like deer, v'yalis chen, and it raises up this quality of chen. So Rashi on the Gemara, this Gemara that we found in Eruvin, Daf Nun Dal on the base. So what does it mean, v'yalis chen? And one studies Torah, they get this quality of, you know, grace of chen, of charisma. It says v'yalis chen alom deha. Anyone who learns it, all of a sudden they achieve chen. She'akol minasim also. Everyone wants to raise him up. It says v'torah no sense lo chen. The Torah that he studied gives him this grace, this chen. So what does that mean? What's that all about? What's this chen? And, you know, we're going to see that Yosef possesses. So let's define it a little deeper. The word for chen, charm, grace, Greeks call it charisma, is two letters. It's a chet and a nun. Now, it's interesting. The letter chet is a very interesting letter in the Hebrew alphabet. First of all, it's very difficult to pronounce. It's not just we Americans who get stuck when we try to say chet, or we hear, the news, happy Hanukkah, right? It's really Chanukah, not Hanukkah. But it's very difficult to say, the letter chet. And it's very difficult for a reason. In fact, it's not pronounceable. That's why. It's a letter which you have to break, so to speak, the natural way of speaking in order to get there. It's not a natural sound. People want to speak normally from the lips, from the upper palate, from the tongue, the middle, or from the palate over here. But to dig deep down in your throat and bring out a letter, you have to break what's natural. It's not natural speech. And that's why, and that's why Happy Hanukkah. Right? That's why everyone will say Happy Hanukkah, not Happy Hanukkah to you, because unless you're trained to do it, it does not come naturally. We Americans kind of get stuck there a little bit. The reason why is because the letter chet always represents connecting ourselves to something above nature, something that goes beyond this world. And you look at the letter chet, for example, numerically, Aleph is 1, Beit is 2, Gimel 3, Dalet 4, Hey 5, Vav 6, Ayin 7. Chet is numerically 8. If we think about it, the letter 8 is always associated with miracles, isn't it? 8 nights of Hanukkah, right? The Brit Milah of the baby boy is on the 8th day, because really by creating a covenant on let's call it the organ of passion, we're really saying to this baby boy, what we expect from you in life is for you to break out of your nature and not be ruled by your nature. As Yosef Hashem says, I'll also change nature for you. You change your nature for me, so to speak. You rule over your nature. You don't be driven only by wants and passions and lusts. I'll change nature for you. So that's what we say all the time. We love about Hashem. What we love about Hashem is when He changes nature. He does miracles. What Hashem loves about us is when we rule over our nature. It's a famous statement. So 8 nights of Hanukkah, 8 days of the bris. Even the letter itself, the number in Hebrew, Shmoneh, the numerical value of Chet, Shmoneh is 8. The same 4 letters is also the root of Shmena, or Shamein. Shamein in Hebrew means fat, oil, or excess. The person who's Shmena means there's excess. Because what's excess? If we use the English word fat, what does it really mean? It means that the person's gone beyond what they're supposed to be naturally. Naturally, a person's supposed to be X, I don't mean extra large. Naturally, a person's supposed to be a certain size, but when they break out of what's natural, now they're in the world of Shemina. 8, so to speak, in a negative sense. Those same 4 letters, if you rearrange them again, Shmoneh, listen just phonetically, spells Nishama, same letters, Nun, Shun, Mem, Hey. Nishama, which means soul, because the soul is breaking out of the physical. The soul is the purely spiritual part that exists inside of the soul. If you rearrange the letters again, like do another, what's the word, like game we play? Bananagrams, right? We rearrange the letters again. It spells Mishnah. Same letters. Mem Shun, Mem Shin, Mem Hey. Just put the letters in different order. Mishnah is the oral law. What's the oral law? It's the divine law that's given from above to below. The law that connects us, so to speak, from up here to above here, to above this world, to a world beyond. So the idea of 8 is always this vision of going beyond this world, Chet. So the first letter of Chen is Chet. What does that mean? It means in order to achieve Chen, a person has to break out of this world. They have to grab onto a higher vision, so to speak, of this world. Get beyond and go to that Chet. Is there a vision here that I could latch onto? Is it a vision of a big idea that I could bring down? Is it the correct emotional response I'm going to really work towards over here? The inner world of feeling the right thing, thinking the right thing, judging favorably, whatever it might be. That's the Chet. Can I break out, so to speak, of the natural world and latch myself up to something above? And that's why when a person learns Torah, it says they have Chen. Naturally, they have Chen. Why do they have Chen? Because what's Torah? Torah is coming from the world of Shemayim, of Hashem. The person says, the vision I have for this world isn't just what I see. The vision I have for this world is I want to break out of this world. I want to grab onto the Torah. I want to grab something above me and bring it down into this world. So when a person does that, all of a sudden people look at them and it says in the Gemara, they elevate that. Why? because, they look at the person as if to say, like, where did you come from? You're not coming from planet Earth. You're coming from above this world, this dimension. Something is special about you because you're able to go above and pull something deeper down. The letter nun, which is the last letter of the word chen, is a nun sofit. We know we have two types of nuns. We have the nun, the regular nun, which is the middle of a word, the beginning of a word, and we have a nun sofit, the letter that comes to the end of a word, the nun. The nun sofit is the longest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It goes like this. It starts above the line and extends below and below and below and below and below. And actually, what does nun mean? Nun means actually a grandchild. What's a grandchild? Someone who extends your generations outward. In other words, we only have, a child. We're in one generation. Our child is able to go down another generation. And then a grandchild continues the generations. The idea of a nun is the idea of extending downward. You're extending your legacy. You're just extending your legacy down, 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 down. That's a nun. So the idea of a nun is always the idea of taking something and bringing it down into the world in the deepest possible way. So what's chen, chet nun? Breaking out of the physical, reaching above ourselves, so to speak, to latch on to a deeply spiritual idea, an idea above this world, as it were, and living it and bringing it down into the world, bringing it as deep as we can go into the nun. Nun, by the way, numerically is 50. It's always associated with the idea of malchus, kingship. Why? Because what's the job of a king? The job of a king is supposed to bring ideas and make them real in the world. The king's in charge of fighting the wars. The king's in charge of making sure the economy is working. The king is in charge of making sure that the garbage is being picked up. The king, the king's job is to extend the vision into the world. That's really what a king is all about. So that's chen. We hear the vision of chen. Now this is something which Yosef possessed. It says that when Yaakov blesses him in his life, he says to him that, you are a child of chen. I want to bless you to continue to be able to live your life, to reach above yourself and bring that chen into the world. Bring that vision to the world. In fact, when Yosef meets Binyamin for the first time, after Binyamin comes down to Mitzrayim and Yosef reveals himself, or even before Yosef reveals himself, he says, "Who is this? Your little brother?" And Yosef does not yet, Yosef knows it's Binyamin, Binyamin doesn't know it's Yosef. But Yosef says to him, Yachnucha b'ni, he gives him a blessing, Yachnucha b'ni, that you should achieve chen, my son. So Yosef lived this idea of extending above himself and bringing ideas down the deepest possible way. And that's wherever he went. The reason why, wherever he went, he was noticed. He's noticed by his brothers. Well, that may be inappropriately noticed because maybe he had misused the idea early on in his life. But as he goes down into Egypt and he's sold to slavery, he arrives in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar notices him. And, it points him to be the head of the whole estate. He's a slave, but the head of the whole household. Who else notices him? The wife of Potiphar. He's everywhere he goes, he's seen. There's something that's remarkable about him. She notices him, of course, and that gets him, into trouble to some extent. And he ends up in the prison. And while he's in prison, he's also noticed, by the way, that he's appointed to be head of the prison. Wherever he goes, there's something which glows in Yosef. In fact, when he becomes the viceroy, the Medrash says something kind of interesting, that it says that Ali Ayin Ali Shor, that the women of Egypt used to stand on a wall to look over just to gaze at him, just to look at him. And it says that if they were cutting vegetables when he walked by, it was possible to lose a finger. You have to be careful. If there's something like there's a glow. Now he had tremendous physical beauty. Yosef was Yosef Story, but it wasn't only the beauty which was startling. There was this aspect that he possessed of chen. Now, what does that mean, chen? Again, it's not something which a person's born with. It's the active work that a person does when they reach above themselves and shoot for the big idea and want to bring this idea down. They have the idealism, as it were, to go above themselves, say, I'm bringing it down. They have the presence of mind to go above themselves and bring it down. I remember one time, I kind of felt it was like a very rainy day at Emmett Outreach, and one of our program director, Sarah B. So she came in the office and said, my car, I can't start my car, it needs a jump. And so we could call it. She used to do the number of shomrim. Shomrim was it's an organization that of religious guys who go out and help fix cars and things like this. So I was thinking to myself, like, why should she call shomrim? I should do it. I know how to jump a car. I have cables. And it was pouring rain outside. I didn't have a raincoat. I didn't have an umbrella. But I said to myself, it's the right thing to go out and do it. Like, if someone's going to get wet, let me get wet. Why should another Jewish guy get wet? I'll go wet. So I go out, I have my coat on, and in the rain, and I'm taking my cables out, I'm jumping the car. And apparently, like it looked, something about it caught her attention, and she took out her cell phone and started Facebooking it live out into the world of Facebook. And I got all these comments about it. Rabbi Kraft, they're jumping the car. And I was thinking, like, what, in the rain? And I was thinking, like, what's so unusual about it? I didn't feel I was doing anything which was tremendously, difficult or I don't like getting wet. I really don't. And, I know how to jump a car. But I think what caught her attention and maybe caught the attention of people was I went out really with a positive motivation. I really said to myself, I don't want someone else getting wet. I'm going to do this. And, because I think I reached for that idea, which is above myself, that idea of how can I do chesed and save somebody else from discomfort, I brought an idea down into the world. And when I brought the idea into the world, I think at that moment it gave me a degree of chen. And that chen was noticed. Well, there's something that's an amazing thing you're doing right now. Even though technically it wasn't so difficult. And that wasn't such a great act of heroism. But it was chen. Because I went above myself for the big idea and brought the big idea down. So when we live an idea of idealism and we reach in every situation we're in to come and to say, like, how can I connect high and bring the idea down into this world? That's when we acquire that charisma, so to speak. And what does it say? Everyone notices it. Who notices it? People notice it. You know who else notices it? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you notice it. Hashem loves you for it. People love you for it. And you love yourself for it because you really feel you lived in a way which was real and really, really noble. Really trying to grab onto a deep, deep idealism. And that was Yosef. Yosef, in every stage of his life, was able to grab onto that. Now, let me give you one example that I always think is so beautiful to me. And, when Yosef is in prison, so again, how does he arrive in prison? He arrives in prison because Ashes Potiphar notices him. The wife of Potiphar notices him and tries to seduce him. And at the moment, he's about to it's a big challenge for him. Not a simple challenge, but he is able to resist. One second. He is able to resist, but it costs him to go to prison. Now, he's in prison for approximately 9 years, or 10 years at this point, because he's going to be ultimately 12 years in prison. And all of a sudden, two other people come in. Who are they? The baker and the butler, and both accused of having committed crimes against Paro. And what's interesting is something that is just a very simple statement in the Torah, but it's extremely, it's extremely important. So Yosef's been there about 10 years, and all of a sudden these new prisoners come in. And it says in Parshat Yeshev, V'yishat Srisei Baal Asher Ito b'mishmar, and Yosef asks the ministers of Pharaoh, who are with him in the jail, Beis Adonav Lemor, saying, Madua Panechem Raim Hayom. Why are your faces look so sad today? Hayom. I guess they had been there previous days. But he notices them, and it says, Madua Panechem Raim Hayom. Why do you appear sad to me today? Why? What's going on? And they say, so let's just look for a moment. So they respond, they tell them, we've been accused and we've had these dreams. And Yosef says, I know how to interpret dreams. But there's a Ramban here that asks a very interesting question. It says, Vayisha Alo Sam Lemor. He asks them. he notices them. It says, why does the Torah have to tell us this detail? Like Torah doesn't give us any extraneous information. The Torah is very concise and terse, as we know, and the Torah only gives us what Hashem deems necessary for us to know. Much of the Torah, as we know, is found in the oral law. As it says, Shecht, like I told you. How do you know all the laws of Shechita? It's all in the oral law. All it says in the written law, God says, just Shecht the way I explained to you. Hashem doesn't even list those laws because it's all in the oral law. But when it comes to this detail of noticing the faces of the Sarmashka and Sarofi, the butler and the baker, Yosef comments and the Torah records it, Hashem records it. So the Ramban asks why. The Ramban says, what's going on? He writes the Sapir b'Shavach Yosef, because the Torah wants to let us know an additional praise of Yosef. This is all designed to tell how great Yosef is. Why? Let's think for a second. She'anar, Evid, who was he in prison? First, he was accused falsely. He was a nar. He was still young. He was a slave in Egypt, still a slave in jail. And who does he ask? Shnei Sarim Gedolim. 2 ministers. These 2 ministers are people who are directly connected to Pharaoh. So he is asking 2 people who are, at the elite of Egypt, so to speak, and he is a slave in Egypt. And what does that mean? Apparently, each one of these people serving in Pharaoh's government, as it were, had power to, let's say, says Rosho, really had, I don't know what that means exactly here, but they had a lot of power. But Yosef didn't have any fear to go over to them and ask them and say, you look sad today. Why? And he said, and to say to them, Daitu b'pitaron. And not only that, to tell them, I know how to interpret dreams. So he was secure in his wisdom. So Shalom Nimnat Sa'ofim, and so whatever he told them came true. So what's interesting is it's telling us a praise of Yosef. What's the praise of Yosef? The praise of Yosef was that he was able to have the sensitivity to notice somebody else's problem, even in prison. If you think about that, well, it's something startling. Yosef was in prison himself. He was an Evid. He was a person who needs help. He has his own problems to worry about, his own worries. Is he going to get out? When is he going to get out? He's been there 10 years. He doesn't know when this sentence is coming to an end. He's a slave. They say this to be a slave, by the way, in Egypt was the worst place in the world to be a slave. To be a prisoner in Egypt was probably one of the worst places to be a prisoner. He was a prisoner, was a slave. So he had worries. Granted, he had high level bitachon and trust, but if we look at the story through the eyes of almost the human aspect of Yosef, to be concerned with someone else's needs, to be worried about their problems, to notice, wow, your face looks sad today. Why? Tell me. Can I help you? Even in a prison in Egypt is something remarkable. And what does that mean? That's where Chen lives. Chen is that aspect of wherever you are, you reach up high and you say, what is the bigger vision that I could bring down to where I am? And for Yosef at this juncture, what was that big vision? The vision was, how can I do chesed for someone else? How can I do kindness? How can I give beyond myself even here? How can I take that value, that concept that I learned in my father's home about seeing Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, having respect for every human being, being sensitive to the needs of every human being? And how can I reach up high and bring that idea down into the depth, the lowest place on planet Earth, a prison in Egypt? When one does that, all of a sudden, they achieve this aspect of chen, of charisma, of grace. It's like you're reaching for something beyond what's normal. You broke out of the 7, you hit the 8. You broke out of 7, you went for the chet, the unnatural letter. And you brought it all the way down to the nun, all the way down to the deepest depth of a prison in Egypt. And look at that, people start noticing it. In the prison, certainly the guards in the prison noticed it. They made him head of the prison. And eventually it's that chen which is going to come to the to, eventually the Sarah Mashke is going to remember that, and he's going to come to Paro's attention. But that's an aspect of Yosef, which is so dominant in his life. This aspect of reaching high in every situation and bringing it down. Now, I just want to take us through. Is any? Are we doing okay with that? How are we doing with that? So far, so good. David, you okay with it? Yael, you good with that? Hi, Yael. So everyone's good with the idea. Okay. So let's see if we could take this a little deeper, if we can. I'd like to share with you something which is a beautiful aspect. I'm going to learn a little Kabbalah at the moment. Okay, if that's okay with everybody. David, that's okay with you?
Yes, please.
Okay, I thought it'd be good with you. We're going to learn a little bit of Kabbalah, and it's about the aspect of. So let me see. I'm going to do it like this with everybody. Okay, I'm going to just do a little bit of drawing here. I'm going to see if we could take this vision of Chai. Now, the reason I love this vision is because this opportunity, in every situation we're in, it's an opportunity to say, how can I break out of myself and grab onto the deepest idea that I can and bring that down? And when we do that, we feel an enormous sense of satisfaction. And again, this, if we look for practical ways, it could be applied to so many situations. Controlling our anger, judging people favorably, doing an act of chesed, which is difficult for us, refraining from speaking lashon hara, stopping people from speaking lashon hara. Even if it's focusing on our tefillah and saying, I'm going to work to concentrate, even though it's difficult for me right now. We're breaking above the natural. We're going for the supernatural. We're bringing it down, and we elevate. We become elevated. We receive that chen, that charisma, so to speak. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu loves it. People love it about us. And we love it about ourselves. And there's no better place to be in the world when you feel all three types of love. Right? You love yourself. People are like, wow, and Kodesh Baruch Hu loves you. He always loves us, but he notices this about us especially. Again, this is the meat of Yosef. Yosef possesses this. Yeah, Dave, do you have a question? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay, so let's just understand this a little deeper of how we do this and what this looks like a little bit. What this looks like a little bit in the thought of from the Kabbalah, from the Ari, and but it's a model that I think we can take with us and utilize and apply this in so many areas of our life, and that's why I'm really sharing it with you. Okay, so let's take a look for a second. Piece of paper. Okay, so if I'm just going to write a word here, this word, can anybody read that? What does that spell? You see Yud Hey Vav Hey in the right order? It doesn't look backwards, right? It looks correct. So Yud Hey Vav Hey. If we take the numerical value of Yud Hey Vav Hey, God's name, Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, Hey is 5, it's 26. But suppose we want to express God into the world, express Hashem into the world. What does it mean to express Hashem into the world? That's what we try to achieve as Jews. How do we bring Hashem out into the world in everything that we do? Whether we're in the business world, whether we're in the world of learning, we're in the world of relationships. How do we bring Hashem out into the world? That's our job. So if we were to just express Hashem into the world, and again, this is just, we're giving it, the language of thought at the moment. How would I express Hashem in the world? I would speak it. I wouldn't just say Yud Hey Vav Hey. I wouldn't just say Hashem's name, Hashem, Ado Hashem. I would say each letter, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Let me write it out for a moment. It would look like this.
Okay. What is this?
Okay. If I expressed God into the world, I took those 4 letters and I wrote them out. You can write out letters also. A letter is also a word. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. That's how it's spelled. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Now, if I took the numerical value of that, okay, follow this. Yud is 10, Daled is 6. Yud is 10, Vav is 6, Daled is 4. That is 10 plus 6 plus 4 is 20. Hey is 5. Aleph is 1. That's 6. Vav is 6. Aleph is 1. Vav is 6. That's 13. Hey is 5. Aleph is 1. That's 6 again. If I add that across, 20 plus 6 is 26. Plus 13 is 39. Plus 6 is 45. That's interesting, because that's the same numerical value of this word here. Everybody see that word? Adam. What does that mean? Adam is a human being. Aleph is 1. Aleph is 4. Mem is... So you have 45. Okay? It's like math. 45. Expressing God into the world becomes 45 when we spell out God's name. Okay? And the numerical value of Adam is 45. What's the connection? The morale tells us.
Trouble hearing is it?
The job of a human being in this world is to express God out. To completely express God into the world is when we're fully human. That's our job in this world. That's what we're trying for. So Adam is 45, fits the aspect that God, when expressed fully into the world with the Yud, saying out the Yud, hey, Vav, hey, would be 45. Because we were trying to achieve that. We're trying to achieve the fullest expression of God into the world. Now, what does it mean to express God fully into the world? So to do that, let's take it just a little deeper, okay? Is everybody following me? We're with me? To do it a little deeper, let's think. There are 3 ways we express God into the world. What are those 3 ways? We can express God into the world through our thoughts. We can express God into the world through our actions. And we can express God into the world through our inner world, our feelings, our emotions, our inner work that we're doing in ourselves. And by the way, these are the way the 3 patriarchs express God into the world. Avram expressed God into the world through action, chesed. Yitzchak expressed God in the world by becoming a shalom in his inner world, perfecting his inner self, so to speak. And Yaakov brought God into the world through emes, through truth, by analyzing constantly, using his mind, what is the correct course of action in every situation. So these are the 3 expressions, the way we bring God into the world. Through thought, through the inner world that we create, our emotions, so to speak, our inner feelings, and through action. So in Hebrew, we have 3 letters that symbolize both. The Yud in Hebrew, this is a Yud. The Yud always symbolizes the idea of thought. Why? First of all, it's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Doesn't touch the top of the line, doesn't touch the bottom of the line. It just hangs there, so to speak, just like a thought. A thought hangs. Where's a thought? Doesn't top to top, to the bottom, it hangs. Interestingly, numerically, it's 10. So, in mathematics, 10 is called a thought number, a cognitive number. Why? Because 0 through 9 have symbols, they have digits, natural numbers. When you get to 10, you have to start using your mind to create it. One has to put together a 1 and a 0. It's called a thought number for that reason. It doesn't have a natural shape. You have to use other shapes to create it in mathematics. That's why I call it a cognitive number. It's also interesting that the way we form the future tense in Hebrew is always gets a Yud. So where do we see this, by the way? We see this when it says in the Torah, the splitting of the Red Sea, at the Kriyas Yamsuf, Oz Yashir, and then he sang the song at the sea. Oz Yashir, which means and then he will sing. Yashir with the Yud. So Rashi there says in the spot, it says Oz Yashir, the Yud is the letter of machshava, of thought. Why? Because where is the future? The future isn't here. The future is only in thought. So how beautiful the grammar is? When you want to form the future tense in the third person, masculine third person, it always gets the Yud. Like, for example, Yeshev, he will sit. Yarutz, he will run. Yilmod, he will study. Whatever word you want. You have Yidaber, he will speak. Yomar, he said. He will say. Excuse me. The Yud is always the first letter of the sort of the root of the future tense, as seen by the third person form. Because the Yud pushes something out into thought in the future. So just okay. So Yud is always the idea of of thinking. That's why, by the way, and this is the word for a man in Hebrew is an ish. Ish means a man, because really where men live in terms of their spiritual world is in the world of the yud, is in the world of thought. That's why men put the tefillin on top of their head. Because the idea of putting on top of the head is to reach up above ourselves and bring ideas down. And have those ideas sort of permeate the entire being, flow through our mouths, flow through our hearts, flow through our entire body. That's the straps. So yud is the tefillin, so to speak, is the vision of a man to go above himself, bring ideas down, and bring it through himself. That's why men have more of a mitzvah to study Torah than women, because a man has to engage in that aspect of reaching above himself and bring wisdom down. What's the letter for expressing an idea out in the world in action? It's the letter Hey. This letter over here. The letter Hey is the idea of expressing an idea out into this world. In fact, it says that when God created the world, it says in Bereshis, Behei Baram, which means in its creation. However, our sages break up that word and say when God created the world, Behei Baram, he created it with the letter Hey. This world looks like the letter Hey. Why is that? It's because the Hey, we know in the Hebrew language that there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. However, there are only 7 shapes. Interesting. Only 7 shapes. So the 7 shapes, you form all 22 letters. Interesting. By the way, the 22 divided by 7, the ratio of 22 over 7 happens to be this number right here. 3.14567, I think, something like that, which we know is this guy. Pi, right? Jonathan, you got that? The ratio of 22 by 7 happens to be pi. Why? Because God creates a world of circles. So it makes sense that he gives us the formula to know the circumference of a circle within the mechanism that he used to create the world, which is the Hebrew alphabet. Okay. Just something to think about. So, but it's yeah, like that.
Love it between Judaism and math. This is where my
I really appreciate that. So it says like this. Okay. So the letter Hey is really composed of 2 letters. It's a Dalet and a Yud. Now the letter Dalet represents the physical world. I'll explain to you why. First of all, it's numerically 4, and there are 4 directions. It's the first letter that starts going in 4 directions: north, south, east, west. And what does it mean? It means a delet. Dalet means a delet. Delet is a door. And this world, as we know, is a doorway to the next world. Olam hazeh door the olam haba. This world is not the end. This world is the beginning. That's why a grave in Hebrew is called a kever. You rearrange those 3 letters, kuf, beit, reish, it spells boker. Boker tov. Good morning. Why? Because the grave isn't the end. The grave is a new morning, which is probably why in English the word morning and morning have the same phonetic sound, even though they're spelled phonetically. They sound the same, even though they're spelled differently. But it's not. I don't believe it's a coincidence. Morning and morning, because morning is really a morning. It's a new morning. Kever, and we read those letters again. By the way, it becomes rakav. Rakav in Hebrew means to disintegrate or to rot. So what happens is the body decays, but the soul ascends to a new reality. The grave is a doorway, the next world. This world is a doorway, so to speak. This world is not the end. This world is a place to gain what we're going to have for eternity. This world is olam hazeh door, the olam haba, as it says in Pirkei Avot. This world is the doorway to the next world. So it's very interesting, very interesting concept. So, what's the idea of a Hey? A Hey is the idea of taking an idea, the Yud, that's a Yud, and expressing that Yud out into the physical world. That's why God creates the world with a Hey. The Hey is a symbol of this world, a physical reality that contains a spiritual core, an idea. Now, that's a very deep vision. Expressing an idea out into the world is the act of chesed. Chesed isn't just the idea of I'm just going to do it. No, I have a deep vision, but I want to make it real in the world. By the way, this word has a Hey. Everybody read that word? Isha. What does Isha mean? Isha means a woman. A man contains a yud, but no hey. A woman has a hey, but no yud. Interesting, because the vision really, in a spiritual point of view, of a woman is, again, I'm talking in very abstract ideas. Obviously, men possess these ideas, women possess those ideas, but the deepest spiritual concept is that a woman is a hey. The idea of a hey is to take an idea and make it real in the world. So the best way to understand this is through childbirth, so to speak. If a man supplies the yud, the seed, spark, the idea, a woman takes that spark and expresses that spark out in the world in the formation of a child. That's the vision of a hey. How do we take that idea and make it real in the world? And that's the strength and the greatness of what women bring to the formula, to the equation, to the table, as it were. To how do we make these ideas real in the world? It's not enough just to think about the idea of Shabbos. We have to make the idea of Shabbos real in the world. How can we express a home that speaks to it? Otherwise it's a very boring, cold place. So the combination of that yud, so to speak, in the physical world, expressing it out is very much a female vision. And that's why God creates the world with a hey. He wants that vision of the world. By the way, when you combine a yud and a hey together, you get God's name, right? That's the beauty of marriage. When you remove the yud and the hey, you're left with these two letters, aleph shin, which means fire. Aish. What happens when two fires come together? It's a conflagration. It's an explosion. There has to be the yud. There has to be the hey. There has to be a vision. How do we have a deep idea? How do we express it in the world? We have to work in partnership. When that idea is there, then we bring in God is present. That's where peace reigns. You take God out, take the yud and the hey away, it's just fire. And fire destroys without purpose. Okay. So that's the hey is the vision of expressing God out deeply into the world through action. Now, what about the letter? What's the letter that would express the idea of inner work, of the silence of our own inner emotion that's driving us and trying to achieve perfection in ourselves? For example, when we're working inside ourselves and no one can see what we're doing, the perfection of tefillah, the perfection of judging somebody favorably. This is all inner work that we're doing. What letter symbolizes that? That's the letter Aleph. This guy over here. Aleph. Why is that? Well, let's think. Aleph, how do we pronounce an Aleph? Pronunciation is one of the tools we utilize to analyze a letter. I heard it, Jonathan, very good. Aleph is totally silent. Aleph is, there's no sound. Chet, remember, is an unnatural letter. Chet, you have to break out of the natural world in order to achieve. Aleph is no sound. It's the idea of what's hidden from the eye, the idea of the connection to something deeply spiritual. It's always the idea of a connection to the spiritual world, whether it be Hashem, or the aspect of connecting to our own inner spiritual world, the work we do on inside of ourselves, the emotion that we're feeling, having the right intention, trying to work within ourselves to achieve perfection. That's the vision of an Aleph, that silence that's inside of ourselves. So interesting. What it means to express God out into the world fully. There are three ways we express God out in the world. We express God out through our thoughts, ideas, Torah, vision of our idealism, and expressing out and living a life that has that yud, living that life of deep ideas and deep vision for what we're trying to achieve. We express God in the world, but we express that yud into the world through the hey, through our actions, our chesed, our kindness, the way we give out to others. And there's the other aspect of the way we express Hashem out in the world, is when we work inside of ourselves and achieve that inner perfection. Again, the silence that's going in our own mind and in our own hearts, but we're working to achieve it. And I'm using the idea of judging someone favorably as a prototype, because no one sees it. No one sees what we're doing, but we're doing that hard work of judging somebody favorably inside our minds and in the silence of ourselves. Yud, hey, and Aleph. Those are the three ways we bring God into the world. And again, when we express God fully into the world, we become really that complete Adam, that complete 45, that Adam. So let me show you something very interesting. Yosef was very much in possession of this midah of chen. chen. And again, chen is the aspect where we reach above ourselves and we express what's above, which is Hashem. We express him out of the world in everything that we do. That's how we acquire that charisma, chen. And again, Yosef seems to do that in everything that he does. He seems to do it with the way he's perceiving the world, the way his actions, the way he asks people about how are they doing spiritually, where are you, how are you feeling, you look sad. He's doing the inner work in himself. We probably all, by the way, have one aspect that we do better than the others. They're called the shorish and the shama, the root of our own souls seems to be in one of these areas, by the way. Whether we like expression of the world, we work better in thought, or we work better in inner perfection. One of them seems to be our dominant spiritual trait. The other two we try to help complete ourselves or try to perfect also. One of them is our dominant trait. But these three areas are the places where we're trying to bring Hashem down into the world in the most complete possible way. And when we do that, we possess, Hashem gives this gift of chen, where there's a light that shines through us that Hashem notices, people notice, and we notice it in ourselves. And that's the most beautiful thing we can achieve, chen. And it's just, we say the person has chen, I don't know what they're saying, but we say it. But even, by the way, Kabbalah is called Chochmas HaChen, the wisdom of chen. Don't think this is a simple idea. The study of Kabbalah is called the study of Chochmas HaChen, the wisdom of chen. Even, by the way, the word chinuch, which means education, has that two-letter chen in there. Chinuch. Chen. What's real chen? What's real education of children? It's bringing out from the child the ability to express himself deeply into the world. That his personality should be such that he could go above himself and bring his vision of the world deeply down. And break out and be that person he's supposed to be by reaching above and bringing it through. That's real education, not writing F's on tests. That's not education. It's not memorizing, I don't know, sailing ships of Christopher Columbus. Even though you should know it, Nina Pinto Santa Maria. Okay, but it's that's real chen. Let me just show you something so beautiful. And this is the Ari I'm going to show you. So what's the word we're looking at? Chen. Chen is an 8, is chet nun. Chet numerically is 8. Nun numerically is 50. We have 58. Okay, so just keep that number 58 there on your screen. 58. Now watch this. Remember, if you want to express God completely to the world, we wrote out his name. I'm going to express God. How do I express God to the world? Well, I do that just in a form of, in a mathematical form. I would say, not mathematical, but in a thematic way, I would say express God to the world by saying out his name, not saying Hashem, but I would say Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, the 4 names of his letter, the 4 letters for the 4 words that correspond to the letters of his name. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So let me write that again for everybody, okay? I'm going to write the Yud, Vav, Dalet. I'm going to write the Hey, Aleph. I'm going to write the Vav, Aleph, Vav. And I'm going to write the Hey at the end, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, Aleph. Okay? So God's name would look like that. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. And we added those letters together, we got 45. Which is the same numerical value as Adam, as we mentioned. It's also 45. The job of a man is to express God in the world. Now, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Now, this is where you have to listen carefully. For that, we're even going to change colors. So, over here, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The letter Hey. There are different ways to spell Hey. One way to spell Hey is Hey Aleph. You can also spell Hey like this. You can spell it Hey Yud. And you can spell it as Hey Hey. Okay? You can spell Hey as Hey Yud, or Hey, or Hey Aleph. 3 ways in Judaism to spell the letter Hey. What I chose to do in this example, I spelled the way it's normally spelled, which is the Hey with an Aleph, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, and that comes to 45. However, and this is from the Ari, Let's see if we could write Hashem's name, however, where we have the letters of, we have all three letters of that hey. Okay, so I'll write it like this. Right, again, the yud would stay the same. Yud, vav, dalet. We'll keep the next hey. Instead of writing it hey aleph, I'm going to write it hey yud. The vav stays the same. Vav, aleph, vav. We'll write the last hey as hey, hey. Okay. So we have God's name. Yud, vav, dalet. Instead of hey aleph, I'm going to write that as hey yud. The vav, aleph, vav is the same spelling as vav. And instead of the hey aleph, I'm writing as hey, hey. So now we have the hey, we have all three, in God's name now, we have all three letters that reflect how possible ways to write the hey. What do I mean by that? Well, in this hey, I have the yud. In this hey, I have the hey. And the word vav, I have the aleph. Okay, so I have the yud, the aleph, and the hey. All three ways you can write the letter hey in there. Now, what have I done by that, by the way? Well, let's see. I've added a yud, so to speak. I've changed the numerical value a little bit by writing out, allowing the hey to be expressed in its different ways, and allowing the aleph in vav to remain as we always spelled hey before. Let's see if we can take a numerical value now of God's name when we give all three possibilities to spell the letter hey. Interesting. Let's take a look. Yud vav daled is 20. Hey yud now becomes, instead of being 6, becomes 15. Vav aleph vav stays the same. 6 plus 1 plus 6 is 13. And hey hey, instead of being hey plus 1 plus 6, hey hey becomes 5 plus 5, which is 10. Now let's look for a moment. Remember chen? Numerical value of chen, chet nun is 58. What's chen? Chen is when we reach above ourselves and we express Hashem down into the world as deeply as we can go. There are three ways to express God in the world. You could do it in the yud, thought. You do it in your inner, quiet, silent world with the aleph. And of course, you do it with the hey of expression through action. When one does that, one expresses God into the world completely, and one has that magnificent quality called chen, like Yosef possessed. Interesting.
How
When we
does
write God's name out now,
spell?
Yud Hey Vav Hey, Yud Hey Vav Hey, we spelled the Hey down with the Yud, we spelled the other Hey with a Hey, and we left the Aleph in the Vav. We have 20, plus 15 is 35, plus 13 is 35 is 48, plus 10 is 58. Interesting. 58.
How is Hain spelled?
What's that, Jonathan?
How is Hain that?
Chen. What's that?
Yeah. How is that spelled?
Pardon me, Chen?
Yes.
Chet nun.
Het nun. Okay.
Chet nun. Chet is 8, nun is 50. So what we just did over here, when we express God's name out of the world, but we allowed the name to possess all three ways we express God's name out of the world, through the yud, the idea, through the aleph, the silence of our own inner perfection, our own inner world, and the hey, the letter of bringing thought out into action, doing something. The three ways we express God in the world, to reach above ourselves, to bring it down. We could bring it out through thought, we could bring it out through our own inner world, or we could bring it out through action. When we allow those letters to be part of God's name, so to speak, what does it come out numerically to? 58. The same numerical value as chen. Because what does it mean to express God deeply in the world? It means to express God deeply in those three ways. And when we do that, we achieve that beautiful quality called chen. This is from the Ari. This is the Ari's. That's one of my, not that I know so many Ari's, but this is, when I heard this, I was blown away by it, and I utilize it because I think it's beautiful in structure and form. And, you know, so in the expression through mathematics, the expression of gematria to reveal a deep philosophical insight. But I think it's also very practical. In other words, what's practical about it? Because that's really the mission of a Jew. The mission of a Jew is to develop chen, And what does that mean? It means to be reaching above ourselves in every situation, to say, what is the idealism here? What am I trying to achieve here? And not to be afraid for it, to go for it. I'm going to get the idea. I'm going to bring it down to the nun, all the way down. Whether it be an idea and have it and hold on to that idea and be focused on it and express it out to people, or whether it be in my own inner world, the silence inside myself. I'm going to work on the right emotion here, the right feeling. Again, judging people favorably. I use that as my example. Or whether it be an action. How can I go above myself and say, what's the right action that I need to do here? The expression of that yud down into the dalet, into the hay. In my example, when I went into the rain, and said, why should another Jewish guy get wet? I'll get wet. Let me do it. So when we grab for that big idea and that inner perfection and the right action, we bring it as deep as we can to the world, we expressed God completely into the world, and we're living really in a high level Jews. That was Yosef Tzaddik. That's why his meter was chayin. Everywhere he goes, people notice him. Every place he goes, people are like, where did you come from? You're connected to someplace else. We just we're amazed by you. That's chayin. And Kodesh Baruch Hu loves us, and we love ourselves because we're living in lives with the fullest expression of God into the world. It's the key to self-esteem, to express God out into the world in the most deepest and fullest possible way. And that's why when God's name is written out in its fullness, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, utilizing the Hey, the three possible ways to spell that Hey. Because remember, Hey is the letter of bringing something out into the world. I could bring something out of the world through my ideas, through my feelings, and through my actions. So when Hey is brought out, when all three aspects are expressed into the world, in the three possible writings of the Hey, oh, what a coincidence. It happens to be God's numerical value is 58, the same numerical value of Chayin. Because Chayin is the fullest expression of God into this world. And that's something we're able to achieve in every aspect of our lives. To think about it. Every situation, or what can I do to reach up for an idea and bring it down? Who needs my help right here the most? How do I, what's the idea I'm going to strive for right now? What's the feeling I should be going for where I am? And that work is the work of going ascending above and bringing down. Going above to the chet, above ourselves, and bringing it all the way down to the nun, to the deepest part of this world. And when we do that, we've achieved the meat of Chayin. Okay, and Yosef is the model for that. That's why Yosef's meat is Chayin. Yaakov blesses him at the end of his life. Yosef should continue your Chayin. That's the Yosef blessing. And Yosef blesses people with that blessing because he loves that meat. When he sees Binyamin for the first time, first thing he says to Binyamin is, Yaknucha b'ni, my son, you should have Chayin also. Bless you, the ability to develop your Chayin. Again, Chayin is something we have to work to get. We work to get it, that God gives a gift, but we have to do the hard work of reaching above ourselves and bringing that vision down. The vision of the Yud, bringing thoughts out of the world which are deep and real and beautiful, Torah, getting the right internal perfection, the right feeling, the right emotion, working inside our brains and everything where we can to do what's right in the situation. And of course, expressing idea out into action, chesed, and making what we think is real in the world. We do that, we express the fullness of God into the world, and we achieve this beautiful concept called Chayin. And again, the Greeks translated it, Chayin, when they translated our Torah, they translated it as charisma, which means charismas means charisma. So the world thinks charisma is like, something you just have or you don't have. As Jews, that's not the perspective. It's something we achieve when we break out of the physical reality and we reach above our spiritual reality and bring it down. That's the Jewish vision of Chayin. And again, I enjoy teaching this so much because I really believe this is such a practical concept to us, as deep as it is and so thematically aligned and so visually expressive when you see the letters line up so beautifully like that. But this is something to think about, to bring into our lives. And I think when we do, we really live our lives with a lot more feeling, a lot more fulfillment. Okay, everybody, maybe we'll stop over here. Wishing you a wonderful day and wonderful rest of your week. And Mr. Shem, looking forward to continuing next week. We'll see each other on Tuesday at 12. As we always say, if it's Tuesday, it must be lunch and learn. Okay. Take care, everybody. Wishing you a wonderful week.
Thank you, Rav.